This talk is quite an exciting talk, and it's revolutionary because it challenges some of the stereotypes of Christian growth. Talk began in our series on the Trinity last year, and in that series on the Trinity we developed a very much more profound, dynamic, big picture of God and his project in the world. Now, during that talk we confronted the implication, which is that this expansive picture of the Trinity, this expansive picture of God, really reframes the Christian agenda away from what we call the religious agenda to a growth agenda. And that's what this talk begins to pursue. What is that growth agenda? What is the new agenda? So we begin by trying to break down and critique the traditional mental models that Christians have, I think quite inadvertently, built up around what it means to grow. And we call that the God-in-a-box mindset, the religious mindset, which tends to frame the main job of the Christian as the management of sin. And so this is a very negative framing. It's a moralistic, ethical framing, and it's a framing that becomes very quickly stereotypes of behaviour. Christians do this and don't do this. It is incredibly soul-destroying, to be frank. It's not interesting, and it's, in many cases, positively turns Christianity into a controlling, inhibiting, normalising mindset. So we spend the first part of the talk critiquing that. That's fine. It's good to break things down, and it's necessary. The question is, what do we put in its place? And what we put in its place is a growth agenda that does not require sin to define it. This is an absolutely critical point, that we need a definition and a concept of growth that is not sin management. Now, we got that, began to build that in the talk by creating 6 epic principles for growth. What is growth? I won't go through those point by point, but essentially what they say is growth begins in the character of God. We are participating in something he's doing when we talk about growth. We're not trying to catch up. We're not trying to ingratiate ourselves. We're not trying to get rid of things in order to be acceptable in his presence. So these principles map out the foundation for thinking about growth completely differently, and they are principles, none of which have the word sin in them. They don't begin with that. Not that we as Christians neglect this word. It's more that we celebrate in Christ the phenomenal solution to that world. He has solved the sin question. We are now living in the consequential era of life. So they're really foundational principles. Principles are good. They give us a nice, powerful reframing, a new paradigm to look at things, but they don't give us an operating model. And that's what the last half of this talk does. It creates an operating model, an architecture. Now, where do we get that architecture from? We take our cue from Irenaeus of Lyon, who lived around about 170 AD. Some people might have heard of him, one of the epic fathers of the Christian church. And he has this wonderful, intriguing sentence that's getting more and more airplay today, which is that the glory of God is to be fully human. So we look at this idea of what does it mean to be fully human, which would mean fully capturing the image of God. And we take our architecture for growth from the character of God. Let me just put this into educational frameworks. If you're an educator and you're a good educator, or if you're a good coach, what you have in your mind is the end game. And the end game, essentially, if you're a profound educator or a profound coach, is not a series of practices or compliance behaviours. It's a character. It's a new kind of person. So we start with the end game of character, the character of God, and by implication, a character that we share. And we built this model around a Trinitarian model of the normative, the situational, and the existential. That model, which is a tripartite model, becomes the architecture that we explore in the latter half of the talk, which is what it means to be fully human, how that model affects how we behave, how that model affects how we grow ourselves, how that model gives us a curriculum, how that model gives us 3 different areas to develop in our lives, and even 3 different ways to read the Bible. So that's the talk. It's very profound. It's something that I've lived on and ruminated about for 20 years, since 2 of my wonderful friends, Mark Strom and David Jones, first introduced it to me. This talk, I must say, is just the beginning, because it sets an architecture up which we'll build on in coming sessions. Enjoy it.